Chapter 4. Jason. The fight was going great until he got stabbed. Jason slashed his gladius in a wide arc, vaporizing the nearest suitors. Then he vaulted onto the table and jumped right over Antionus's head. In midair, he whirled his blade to extend into a javelin. A trick he never tried with this sword, but somehow he knew it would work. He landed on his feet holding a 6-foot-long pilum. As Antionus turned to face him, Jason thrust the Imperial gold point through the gull's chest. Antionus looked down incredulously. "You enjoy the fields of punishment." Jason yanked out his pilum, and Antionus crumbled to dirt. Jason kept fighting, spinning his javelin, slicing through ghosts, knocking gulls off their feet. Across the old courtyard, Annabeth fought like a demon too. Her dragonborn's bone sword scythed down any suitors stupid enough to face her. Over by the sand fountain, Piper had also drawn her sword, the jagged bronze blade she'd taken from Zeus the Boread. She stabbed and parried with her right hand, occasionally shooting tomatoes from the cornucopia in her left, while yelling at suitors, "Save yourselves! I'm too dangerous!" That must have been exactly what they wanted to hear, but because her opponents kept running away, only to freeze in confusion a few yards downhill, then charge back into the fight. The Greek tyrant Hippias lunged at Piper, his dagger raised, but Piper blasted him point blank in the chest with a lovely pot roast. He tumbled backwards in the fountain and screamed as he disintegrated. An arrow whistled towards Jason's face. He blew it aside with a gust of wind, then cut through a line of sword-wielding gulls and noticed a dozen suitors regrouping by the fountain to charge Annabeth. He lifted his javelin to the sky. A bolt of lightning ricocheted off the point and blasted the ghosts into irons, leaving the smoking crater where the sand fountain had been. Over the last few months, Jason had fought many battles, but he'd forgotten what it was like to feel good in combat. Of course he was still afraid, but a huge weight had been lifted from his shoulders. For the first time since waking up in Arizona with his memories erased, Jason felt whole. He knew who he was. He had chosen his family, and it had nothing to do with Birdie, Grace, or even Jupiter. His family included all the demigods who fought at his side, Roman and Greek. New friends and old. He wasn't going to let anyone break his family apart. He summoned the winds and flung 3 gulls off the side of the hill like rag dolls. He skewered a fourth, then wielded his javelin to shrink back to a sword, and hacked through another group of spirits. Soon, no more enemies faced him. The remaining ghosts began to disappear on their own. Annabeth cut down Hasdrubal the Carthaginian, and Jason made the mistake of sheathing his sword. Pain flared in his lower back, so sharp and cold he thought Chion, the snow goddess, had touched him. Next to his ear, Mitchell snarled, "Born a Roman, die a Roman." The tip of the golden sword jutted through the front of Jason's shirt, just below his rib cage. Jason fell to his knees. Piper's scream sounded miles away. He felt like he'd been immersed in salty water. His body weightless, his head swaying. Piper charged towards him. He watched with detached emotion as her sword passed over his head and cut through Mitchell Verus's armor with a metallic ka-chunk. A burst of cold parted Jason's hair from behind. Dust settled around him, and an empty legionnaires' helmet and rolled across the stones. The evil demigod was gone, but he had made a last impression. "Jason!" Piper grabbed his shoulders and he began to fall sideways. He gasped as she pulled the sword out of his back. Then she lowered him to the ground, propping his head against the stone. Annabeth ran to their side. She had a nasty cut on the side of her neck. "Gods!" Annabeth stared at the wound in Jason's gut. "Oh, God." "Thanks," Jason groaned. "I was afraid it might be bad." His arms and legs started to tingle as his body went into crisis mode, sending all the blood to his chest. The pain was dull, which surprised him, but his shirt was soaked red. The wound was smoking. He was pretty sure sword wounds weren't supposed to smoke. "You're going to be fine." Piper spoke the words like an order. "You're going to be fine." Piper spoke the words like an order. Her tone steadied his breathing. "Annabeth, ambrosia!" Annabeth stirred. Yeah, I got it." She ripped through her supply pouch and unwrapped a piece of godly food. "We have to stop the bleeding." Piper used her dagger to cut fabric from the bottom of her dress. She ripped the cloth into bandages. Jason dimly wondered how she knew so much first aid. She wrapped the wounds on his back and stomach while Annabeth pushed tiny bits of ambrosia into his mouth. Annabeth's fingers trembled. After all the things she'd been through, Jason found it odd that she would freak out. Now, while Piper acted so calm, then it occurred to him Annabeth couldn't afford to be scared for him. Piper couldn't. She was completely focused on trying to save him. Well, it looks like Jason's dead. Well, he's going to die. Don't know. Annabeth fed him another bite. "Jason, I'm sorry about your mum. By the way you handled it, that was so brave." Jason tried not to close his eyes. Every time he did, he saw his mum's spirit disintegrating. "It wasn't her," he said. "At least no part of her. I could save. There at least I wasn't her. At least no part of her was saved. There's no other choice." Annabeth took a shaky breath. "No, only other right choice, maybe, but a friend of mine. Luke, his mum's similar problem. He didn't handle it as well." Her voice broke. Jason didn't know much about Annabeth's past, but Piper glanced over in concern. "I bandaged as much as I can," he said. "Blood is still smoking through." "And the smoke?" "I don't get that." "Imperial gold," Annabeth said, her voice quivering. "It's deadly to demigods. It's only a matter of time before—" "He'll be all right," Piper insisted. "We've got to get him back to the ship." "I don't feel that bad," Jason said. And it was true. The ambrosia had cleared his head. Warmth was seeping back into his limbs. "Maybe I could fly?" Jason sat up. His vision turned a pale shade of green. Or maybe not. Piper caught his shoulders as he keeled sideways. "Whoa, Sparky. We need to contact the Argo to get help." "You haven't called me Sparky in a long time." Annabeth kissed his forehead. "Stick with me and I'll insult you. I'll insult you all you want." Annabeth scanned the ruins. The magic veneer had faded, leaving only broken walls and excavation pits. "We could use the emergency flares, but no," Jason said. "Leo would blast the top of the hill with Greek fire. Maybe if you guys helped me, I could walk." "Absolutely not." Piper objected that would take too long. She rummaged her pouch. She rummaged in her belt pouch and pulled out a compact mirror. "Annabeth, you know Morse code?" "Of course. So does Leo." Piper handed her the mirror. "He'd be watching from the ship. Go to the ridge and flash him." Annabeth's face reddened. That came out wrong, but yeah, good idea. She ran to the edge of the ruins. Piper pulled out a flask of nectar and gave Jason a sip. "Hang in there, you're not dying from stupid body piercing." Jason managed a weak smile. At least it wasn't a head injury this time. I stayed conscious the entire fight. "You defeated like 200 enemies," Piper said. "You were scary, amazing. You guys helped, but hey, stay with me. Jason's head started to droop. The cracks in the stones came into sharper focus. "Little Lizzie," he muttered. "More nectar?" Piper ordered. "There, taste okay?" Yeah, fine." In fact, that nectar tasted like liquid sawdust, but Jason kept that to himself ever since the House of Hades, when he'd resigned his proprietorship. Ambrosia and nectar just didn't taste like his favourite foods from Camp Jupiter. It was as if the memory of his old home no longer had the power to heal him. "Born a Roman, die a Roman," Mitchell Revis had said. He looked at the smoke curling from his bandages. He had worse things to worry about than blood loss. Annabeth was right about the Imperial Gold. The stuff was deadly to demigods, as well as monsters. The wound from Varus's blade would do its best to eat away at Jason's life force. He's seen a demigod die like that once before. It hadn't been fast or pretty. "I can't die," he told himself. "My friends are depending on me." Antigonus's words rang in his ears about the giants in Athens, the impossible trip facing the Argo too, the mysterious hunter Gaia had sent to intercept the asset of Artemis. "Rhena, Nico, and Coach Hedge," he said. "They're in danger. We need to warn them." "We'll take care of it when you get back to the ship," Piper promised. "Your job right now is to relax." Her tone was lacking confident, but her eyes brimmed with tears. "Besides, those three are a tough group. They'll be fine." Jason hoped she was right. Rhena had risked so much to help them. Coach Hedge was annoying sometimes, but he'd been a loyal praetor for the entire crew. And Nico? Jason felt especially worried about him. Piper brushed her thumb against the scar on his lip. "Once the war is over, everything will work out for Nico. You've done what you could, being a friend to him." Jason wasn't sure what to say. He hadn't told Piper anything about his conversations with Nico. He kept D'Anglo's secret. Still, Piper seemed to sense what was wrong. As a daughter of a pro-diet, maybe she could tell when someone was struggling with heartache. She hadn't pressured Jason to talk about it, though. He appreciated that. Another wave of pain made him wince. "Concentrate more on my voice." Piper kissed his forehead. "Think about something good. Birthday cake in the park in Rome. That was nice. Last winter," she suggested. "The s'mores fight at the campfire. I totally got you. You had marshmallows in your hair for days." "I did not." Jason's mind drifted back to better times. He just wanted to stay there talking with Piper, holding her hand, not worrying about giants or Gaia or his mother's madness. He knew they should get back to the ship. He was in a bad shape. They had the information they'd come for, but as he lay on the cool stones, Jason felt a sense of incompleteness. The story of the suitors and Queen Penelope, his thoughts about family, his recent dreams, those things all swelled something he'd missed. Annabeth came back limping from the edge of the hill. "Are you hurt?" Jason asked. Annabeth glanced at her ankle. It's fine. Just the old break from the Roman caverns. Sometimes when I'm stressed. That's not important. I signaled Leo. That's not important. I signaled Leo. Frank's going to change form, fly up here, and carry you back to the ship. I need to make a litter to keep you safe. Jason had a terrifying image of himself in a hammock, swinging between the claws of Frank, the giant eagle. But he decided it would be better than dying. Annabeth set to work. She collected the scraps left behind by the suitors, a leather belt, a torn tunic, sandal straps, a red blanket, and a couple of broken spear shafts. Her hands flew across the materials, ripping, weaving, tying, braiding. How are you doing that? Jason asked in amazement. Learning it during my quest under Rome. Annabeth kept her eyes on her work. I'd never had a reason to try weaving before, but it's handy for certain things, like getting away from spiders. She tied off one last bit of leather, cord, and voila, a stretcher large enough for Jason with spear shafts as carrying handles and safety straps across the middle. Piper whistled appreciatively. The next time I need a dress altered, I'm coming to you. Shut up, McLean, Annabeth said, but her eyes glinted with satisfaction. Now let's get him secured. Wait, Jason said. His heart pounded, watching Annabeth weave the makeshift bed. Jason had remembered the story of Penelope. How she'd held out for 20 years waiting for her husband, Odysseus, to return. A bed, Jason said. There's a special bed in this palace. Piper looked worried. Jason, you've lost a lot of blood. I'm not hallucinating, he insisted. The marriage bed was sacred. If there was an army place you could talk to Juno. He took a deep breath and called Juno. Juno! Silence. Maybe Piper was right. He was thinking clearly. Then about 60 feet away, the stone fall cracked. Branches muscled through the earth, growing in fast motion, until a full-sized olive tree shaded the courtyard. Under a canopy of grey-green leaves stood a dark-haired woman in a white dress and leopard skin cape draped over her shoulder. Her staff was topped with a white lotus flower. Her expression was cool and regal. My heroes, said the goddess. Hera, Piper said. Juno, Jason corrected. Whatever, Annabeth grumbled. What are you doing here, your bovine majesty? Juno's dark eyes glittered dangerously. Annabeth Chase, as charming as ever. Yeah, well, Annabeth said, I just got back from Tartarus, so my manners are a little rusty. Especially towards a goddess who'd wiped my boyfriend's memory, made him disappear for months, and then... Honestly, child, are you going to rehash this again? Aren't you supposed to be suffering from split personality disorder? Annabeth asked. I mean, more so than usual. Whoa, Jason interceded. He had plenty of reasons to hate Juno, but they had other issues to deal with. Juno, we need your help. Jason tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. His inside felt like they were being twirled on a giant spaghetti fork. Piper kept him from falling over. First things first, she said. Jason is hurt. Heal him. The goddess knitted her eyebrows. Her form shimmered unsteadily. Some things even the god cannot heal, she said. This wound touches your soul as well as your body. You must fight it, Jason Grace. You must survive. Yeah, thanks, he said, his mouth dry. I'm trying. What do you mean the wound touches his soul? Piper demanded. Why can't you? My heroes, our time together is short, Juno said. I am grateful that you called upon me. I have spent weeks in a state of pain and confusion. My Greek and Roman natures were against each other. Worse, I've been forced to hide from Jupiter, who searches for me in his misguided wrath, believing that I caused this war with Gaia. Gee, Annabeth said. Why would he think that? Juno flashed her an irritated look. Fortunately, this place is sacred to me. By clearing away those ghosts, you have purified it and given me a moment of clarity. I'll be able to speak with you, if only briefly. Why is it sacred? Piper's eyes widened. Oh, the marriage bed. Marriage bed? I don't see any. The bed of Penelope and Odysseus, Piper explained. One of its bedposts was a living olive tree, so it could never be moved. Indeed. Juno ran her hand along the olive tree trunk. An immovable marriage bed. bed. Such a beautiful symbol. Like Penelope, the most faithful wife, standing her ground, fending off 100 arrogant suitors for years, but she knew her husband would return. Odysseus and Penelope, the epitome of a perfect marriage. Even in his dazed state, Jason was pretty sure he remembered stories about Odysseus falling for other women during his travels, but he decided not to bring that up. "Can you advise us at least?" he asked. "Tell us what to do." Sail around the Peloponnese," said the goddess. "As you suspect, that is the only possible route. On your way, seek out the goddess of victory in Olympia. She is out of control unless you subdue her. The rift between Greek and Roman can never be healed." "You mean Nike?" Andres asked. "How is she out of control?" Thunder boomed overhead, shaking the hill. "Explaining would take too long," Judah said. "I must flee before Jupiter finds me. Once I leave, I will not be able to help you again." Jason bit back a retort. "When did he help me the first time?" "What else should we know?" he asked. "As you heard, the giants had gathered in Athens. Few gods will be able to help you on your journey, but I am not the only Olympian who is out of favour with Jupiter. The twins has also incurred his wrath." "Artemis and Apollo?" Piper asked. "Why?" Juno's image began to fade. "If you reach the island of Delos, they might be prepared to help you. They are desperate enough to try anything to make amends. Go now, perhaps. We will meet again in Athens if you succeed. If you do not..." The goddess disappeared, or maybe Jason's sight simply failed. Pain rolled through him. His head lolled back. He saw a giant eagle circling high above. Then the blue sky turned black, and Jason saw nothing at all. Chapter 5. Raina. Dive bombing a volcano is not Raina's bucket list. Her view of southern Italy was from 5,000 feet in the air to the west along the crescent of the Gulf of Naples. The lights of sleeping cities glittered in the pre-dawn gloom. 1,000 feet below her, a half-mile wide caldera yawned at the top of a mountain, white steam pluming from the center. Raina's disorientation took a moment to subside. Shadow travel left her groggy and nauseous as if she had been dragged from the cold waters of the frigidarium into the sauna at a Roman bathhouse. Then she realized she was suspended in midair. Gravity took hold and she began to fall. "Nico!" she yelled. Pan pipes! Cursed Gleason Hedge. "Run!" Nico flailed, almost slipping under Raina's grip. She held tight and grabbed Coach Hedge by the shirt collar as he started to stumble away. If they got separated now, they were dead. They plummeted towards the volcano as their largest piece of the luggage, the 40-foot-tall Athena Parthenos, trailed after them, leashed to a harness on Nico's back like a very ineffective parachute. That's Vesuvius below us," Raina shouted over the wind. "Nico, teleport us out of here!" His eyes were wild and unfocused. His dark feathery hair whipped around his face like a raven shot out of the sky. I can't. No strength." Coach Hedge bleated. "Newsflash, kid. Goats can't fly. Zap us out of here or we're going to get flattened in an Athena Parthenos omelette." Jason tried to think. Raina tried to think. She could accept death if she had to, but the Athena Parthenos was destroyed. Their quest would fail. Raina could not accept that. "Nico, shadow travel," she ordered. "I'll lend you my strength." He stared at her blankly. How? Do it. She tightened her grip on his hand. The torch and the sword, symbol of Bellona, on her forearm grew painfully hot. As as if it was being seared into her skin for the first time. Michael gasped, the colour returning to his face. Just before they hit the volcano steam plume, they slipped into the shadows. The air turned frigid. The sound of the wind were replaced by a cacophony of voices whispering in 1,000 languages. Raina's inside felt like a piragua. Cold syrup trickled over crushed ice. Her favourite treat from her childhood in Viejo San Juan. She wondered why the memory would surface now when she was on the verge of death. Then her vision cleared. Her feet rested on solid ground. The eastern sky had begun to lighten. For a moment, Raina thought she was back in New Rome. Doric columns lined an atrium the size of a baseball diamond. In front of her, a bronze faun stood in the middle of a sunken fountain, decorated with mosaic tiles. Huge myrtle and rose bushes bloomed in a nearby garden. Palm trees and pines stretched skyward. Cobblestone paths led from the courtyard in several directions. Straight, level roads of good construction, edging low stone houses with colonnaded porches. Raina turned behind her. The Athena Parthenon stood intact and upright, dominating the courtyard like a ridiculously oversized lawn ornament. The little bronze faun in the fountain had both his arms raised facing Athena, so he seemed to be cowering in fear of the new arrival. On the horizon, Mount Vesuvius loomed, a dark humpbacked shape now several miles away. Thick pillars of steam curled from the crest. We're in Pompeii. We're in Pompeii, Reno realized. Oh, that's not good, Nago said, and he immediately collapsed. Whoa! Coach Head caught him before he hit the ground. The satyr propped him against Athena's feet and loosened the harness that attached Nico to the statue. Rena's own knees buckled. She'd expected some backlash. It happened every time she shared her strength, but she hadn't anticipated so much raw anguish from Nico D'Angelo. She sat down heavily, just managing to stay conscious. Gods of Rome! If this was only a portion of Nico's pain, how could he bear it? She tried to steady her breathing while Coach Hedge rummaged through his camping supplies. Around Nico's boots, the stones cracked. Dark scenes radiated outwards like a shotgun blast ring, as if Nico's body were trying to expel all the shadows he travelled through. Yesterday had been worse. The entire meadow whirring, cylinders rising from the earth. Raina wasn't anxious for that to happen again. Drink something. She offered him a canteen of unicorn draught powder, horn mix with sanctified water from the little Tiber. They'd found it worked on Nico better than nectar, helping to cleanse the fatigued and darkness from his system, with less danger of spontaneous combustion. Nico gulped it down. He looked terrible. His skin had a bluish tint. His cheeks were sunken, hanging out at his side. The sceptre of Diocletian glowed angry purple, like a radioactive bruise. He studied Rena. How did you do that? The surge of energy. Rena turned to her forearm. The tattoo was still burnt like hot wax, the symbol of Bellona, spore. with 4 lines for her years of service. I don't like to talk about it. It is a power from my mother. I can impart strength to others. Coach Hedge looked up from his rucksack. Seriously? Why haven't you hooked me up, Roman girl? I want super muscle. I want super muscles. Raina frowned. It doesn't work like that, Coach. I can only do it in life and death situations. It's more useful in large groups. When I command troops, I can share whatever attributes I have. Strength, courage, and endurance multiplied by the size of my forces. Nico watched an eyebrow. Useful for a Roman praetor. Raina didn't answer. She preferred not to speak of her powers for exactly this reason. She didn't want the demigods under her command to think she was controlling them or that she became a leader because she had some special magic. She could only share the qualities she already possessed, and she couldn't help anyone who wasn't worthy of being a hero. Coach Hedge grunted. Too bad. Super muscles would be nice. He went back to sorting through his pack, which seemed to hold a bottomless supply of cooking utensils. Survivalist gear and random sports equipment. Tycho took another swig of unicorn draught. His eyes were heavy with exhaustion, but Raina could tell he was fighting to stay awake. You stumbled just now, he noted. When you use your power, do you get some sort of feedback from me? It's not mind reading, she said. Not even an empathy thing, just a temporary wave of exhaustion. Private emotions. Your pain washes over me. I take some of your burden. Nico's expression became guarded. He twisted the silver skull ring on his finger the same way Raina did with her silver ring when she was thinking. Sharing the habit with the son of Hades made her uneasy. She'd felt more pain from Nico in their brief connection than she had from her entire legion during battle against the giant polybotes. It had drained her worse than the last time she'd used her power to sustain her Pegasus during their journey across the Atlantic. She tried to push away that memory. Her brave winged friend dying from poison. His muzzle in her lap, looking at her trustingly as she raised her dagger to end his misery. God, no, she couldn't dwell on that, or it would break her. But the pain she'd felt from Nico was sharper. You could rest, she told him. After 2 jumps in a row, even with a little help, you're lucky to be alive. We'll need you to be ready again by nightfall. She felt bad asking them to do something so impossible. Unfortunately, she'd had a lot of practice pushing demigods beyond their limits. Nico clenched his jaw and nodded. We're stuck here. Now he scanned the ruins, but Pompeii's the last place I would have chosen to land. This place is full of lemures. Lemures? Coach Ed seemed to be making some sort of snare out of a kite string, a tennis racket, and a hunting knife. You mean those cute fuzzy critters? No. Nico sounded annoyed, like he got the question a lot. Lemures, unfriendly ghosts, all the Roman cities have them, but in Pompeii, the whole city was wiped out, Rita remembered. In 79 CE, Vesuvius erupted and covered the town in ash. Nico nodded. A tragedy like that creates a lot of angry spirits. Coach Hedge eyed the distant volcano. It's steaming. Is that a bad sign? I'm not sure. Nico picked at a hole in his knee of his black jeans. Mountain gods, the Ore, have sent children of Hades. It's possible that's why we were pulled off course. The spirit of Vesuvius might have been intentionally trying to kill us, but I doubt the mountain can hurt us this far away. Working up to a full eruption would take too long. The immediate threat is all around us. The back of Raina's neck tingled. She'd grown used to Laris, the friendly spirits at Camp Jupiter, but even they made her uneasy. They didn't have a good understanding of personal space. Sometimes they'd walk right through her, leaving her with vertigo. Being in Pompeii gave Rihanna the same feeling, as if the whole city was one big ghost that had swallowed her whole. She couldn't tell her friends how much she feared ghosts, or why she feared them. The whole reason she and her sister had run away from San June all those years ago. That secret had to stay buried. Can you keep them at bay? She asked. Nate tied up his palms. I've sent out messages. Stay away. But once I'm asleep, it won't do us much good. Coach Head patted his head, racket knife contraption. Don't worry, kid. I'm going to line this perimeter with alarms and snares. Plus, I'll be watching over you the whole time with my baseball bat. That didn't seem to reassure Nico, but his eyes was already half closed. Okay, but go easy. We don't want another Albania. No, Raina agreed. Their first shadow travel experience together 2 days ago had been a total fiasco, possibly the most humiliating episode in Raina's long career. Perhaps someday, if they survive, they would look back on it and laugh, but not now. The three of them had agreed never to speak of it. What happened in Albania? What happened in Albania would stay in Albania. Coach Head looked hard. Fine, whatever, just rest, kid. We've got you covered. All right, Nico relented. Maybe a little. He managed to take off his aviator jacket and waded into a pillow before he kneeled over and began to snore. Rena marveled at how peaceful he looked. The worry lines vanished. His face became strangely angelic, like his surname, D'Angelo. She could almost believe he was a regular 14-year-old boy, not a son of Hades who had been pulled from out of time from the 1940s and forced to endure more tragedy and danger than most demigods would in a lifetime. When Nico had arrived at Camp Jupiter, Rena didn't trust him. She sensed there was more to his story than being an ambassador from his father Pluto. Now, of course, she knew the truth. He was a Greek demigod, the first person in living memory, the first ever to go back and forth between Roman and Greek camps without telling either group that the other existed. Strangely, that made Rena trust Nico more. Sure, he wasn't a Roman. He'd never hunted with Lupa or endured the brutal legion train, but Nico had proven himself in other ways. He kept the camp secrets for the best of reasons, because he feared a war. He had plunged into Tartarus alone, voluntarily, to find the doors of death. He'd been captured and imprisoned by giants. He had led the crew of Argo into the House of Hades, and now he had to accept yet another terrible quest, risking himself to haul in the Athena Parthenons back to Camp Half, but the pace of the journey was maddeningly slow. They could only shadow travel a few hundred miles each night, resting during the day to let Nico recover, but even that required more stamina for Nico than Rena would have thought possible. He carried so much sadness and loneliness, so much heartache. He had put his mission first. He preserved. Rena respected that. She understood that. She'd never been a touchy-feely person, but she had the strangest desire to drape her cloak over Nico's shoulders and tuck him in. She mentally chided herself. He was a comrade, not her little brother. He wouldn't appreciate the gesture. Hey, Coach Hedge interrupted her thoughts. You need sleep too. I'll take first watch and cook some grub. grub. But those ghosts shouldn't be too dangerous now that the sun's coming up. Raina hadn't noticed how light it was getting. Pink and turquoise clouds striped the eastern horizon. The little bronze fawn had cast a shadow across the dry fountain. I've read about this place, Raina realised. It's one of the best preserved villas in Pompeii. They call it the House of the Fawn. Gleason glanced at the statue with distaste. Yeah, well, today is the House of Satyr. Raina managed to smile. She was starting to appreciate the difference between satyrs and fawns. If she ever fell asleep with a fawn on duty, you'd wake up with her supplies stolen, a moustache drawn on her face, and the fawn long gone. Coaches were different, mostly good different, though he had an unhealthy obsession with martial arts and baseball bats. All right, she agreed. You take first watch. I'll put Aurum and Argentum on guard duty with you. Hedge looked like he wanted to protest, but Raina whistled sharply. The metallic greyhounds materialized from the ruins, racing towards her from different directions. After so many years, Raina had no idea where they came from or where they went when she dismissed them, but seeing them lifted her spirits. Hedge cleared his throat. You sure those aren't Dalmatians? They look like Dalmatians. They're greyhounds, Coach. Raina had no idea why Hedge feared Dalmatians, but she was too tired to ask. No, right. Now, Aurum, Argentum, guard us while I sleep. Obey, Gleason, Hedge. The dogs circled the courtyard, keeping their distance from the echoing parsons, which radiated hostily towards everything Roman. Raina herself was only now getting used to it, and she was pretty sure that the statue did not appreciate being relocated in the middle of an ancient Roman city. She lay down and pulled her purple cloak over herself. Her fingers curled around the pouch at her belt where she kept the silver coin Annabeth had given to her before they parted company in Epirus. It's a sign that things can change, Annabeth told her. The mark of Athena is yours now. Maybe the coin will bring you luck. Whether that luck would be good or bad, Raina wasn't sure. She took one last look at the bronze fog covering before the sunrise and the hippopotamus. Then she closed her eyes and slipped into dreams. The end of chapter 4. The end of chapter 5. The end of chapter 5. Bye everyone, and thank you for listening to chapter 4 to 5.